There was something strange about the way she looked at me. It wasn't frequent, it wasn't obvious. And maybe that was exactly why it kept me awake some nights, because I could never be sure. Sometimes it happened during an ordinary conversation, other times when I arrived late to a gathering with friends. And on some occasions, I would glance up by chance and find her watching me for a second longer than normal. Then she would look away, as if nothing had happened, as if I had imagined it. But I hadn't imagined it. I knew I hadn't. The problem was that I knew something else too. I knew what people said when she wasn't around. I knew the comments, the jokes, the crooked smiles, the silent judgments. Because there are judgments people never make to your face. They appear through glances, interrupted, laughter, seemingly harmless remarks, and I had learned to recognize every single one of them. That's why I never allowed hope to take root inside me. It was safer that way, much safer. My name is Ricardo. I'm 38 years old. I work as an industrial maintenance technician. My life wasn't anything extraordinary. I woke up early, worked all day, came home exhausted, read a little before bed, then repeated it all again the next day. I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't exactly happy either. It felt like life was moving at a steady, silent pace. No great tragedies, no great miracles, just days, one after another. And maybe that was exactly why her presence had such an impact on me. Because Carolina seemed to carry life inside her, not in the way loud people do when they enter a room demanding attention. It was different. She had a quiet intensity, a rare ability to make someone feel important during a conversation. When Carolina spoke to you, it felt as though the rest of the world disappeared for a few minutes, and that was dangerous, especially for someone like me. We met by chance, or at least that's what I thought for a long time. A group of mutual friends organized a dinner. I almost didn't go. I was tired. I wanted to stay home, but I showed up anyway. And she was there. I remember my first impression perfectly. Not her appearance, but her voice. A calm voice. Soft. Gentle. She asked questions. Listened to the answers. Actually paid attention. Something rare these days. That night we only talked for a few minutes. Nothing special. No cinematic spark and no movie scene. But when I got home, I realized I was thinking about her. And that kept happening. Weeks, months, maybe years. Because the truth is that Carolina became part of my emotional routine long before she became part of my life. We saw each other at birthdays, barbecues, gatherings with friends, community events, and every meeting seemed to add another piece to a puzzle I didn't dare put together. The problem was simple. She seemed to belong to another universe. Carolina was the kind of woman who naturally drew attention. Intelligent, beautiful, elegant, confident. People liked her immediately. While I was just Ricardo, the guy who always helped set up the chairs, who arrived early, who left without drawing attention, the man people almost never remembered to include in photographs. And the more I liked her, the more I noticed that difference. Not because she ever made me feel it. She never did. But because the world seemed determined to remind me. Once, during a gathering, I overheard a comment. It wasn't even directed at me, but it hit like a punch. Someone said, "A woman like her chooses a different kind of man." That sentence stayed in my head for days, maybe weeks, because it fed an insecurity I'd carried long before meeting Carolina, the constant feeling of not being enough, of not being anyone's first choice, of occupying only temporary spaces in people's lives, and when someone spends years believing that, they start acting as though it's true. That's exactly what I did. I kept my distance, controlled my expectations, buried my feelings, turned affection into friendship, admiration into silence, and kept living, or trying to. If you've ever hidden something important because you believed your feelings wouldn't be returned, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Some stories exist to remind us that things aren't always what they seem. Time passed, and Carolina kept showing up in my life. But there was something curious. She always seemed to find me. At first I thought it was coincidence. Then I started noticing patterns. She sat near me, started conversations, asked about details nobody else remembered. Small things, but persistent. Once I mentioned that my mother had undergone a minor surgery. 2 months later, Carolina asked, "How is she doing?" I was surprised. Nobody else remembered. Another time I mentioned that I enjoyed watching storm clouds. Months later, she sent me a photo of a dark afternoon sky. No explanation, just a picture, and one sentence. "This made me think of you." I spent hours staring at that message. Hours. Because to most people, it would have meant nothing. But to someone used to being invisible, It meant everything. Even then, I refused to believe. I kept creating explanations: friendship, kindness, politeness, anything. Any explanation was easier than admitting the possibility beginning to grow inside me. Then something happened that changed everything. A year-end gathering, a countryside property, music, families, friends, children running through the grass. One of those days that seems ordinary while it's happening, but stays with you forever. I arrived early, helped organize things, carried boxes, set up tables, did what I always did. Around lunchtime, I overheard some people talking. My name came up in the conversation. They didn't realize I could hear them. He's a good guy. Very. But let's be honest. A laugh followed. Then another. Carolina could be with any man she wants. The conversation continued, but I stopped listening, because I already knew the rest. It was always the same story. Different words, same message. I stood there for a few seconds, feeling that familiar sensation, that mixture of embarrassment and resignation, as if someone had officially confirmed something I had been trying not to think about. I walked away, toward a quieter area near the lake. I needed to be alone, needed to breathe, needed to remind myself that there had never been anything between us and that it was all in my head, that accepting reality would be easier. But Carolina found me. Of course she did. She always found me. She sat beside me without saying a word. Just watched the water. Several minutes passed. Then she asked, "What happened?" "Nothing." "Ricardo," I smiled. "I'm fine." She kept looking ahead. "You know I can tell when you're lying." That made me laugh, but the smile quickly faded. Because I was tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of carrying everything alone. Sometimes I wish I were different. She slowly turned toward me. Different. How? I took a while to answer. More interesting. More memorable. More... The words died before I could finish, but she understood. I saw it in her eyes. More worthy of attention? I nodded. The silence that followed hurt. Then Carolina said something I never forgot. "You really have no idea how people see you." I looked at her. "People see me exactly as I am." "No," she answered immediately. "They see much less." Those words echoed inside me for days, weeks, months, because there was too much truth in them, and I still had no idea how much. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I like imagining how many silent stories are scattered across different cities waiting for the right moment to unfold. The months that followed brought changes, small ones, almost invisible, but deep. Carolina started appearing more often. Our conversations became longer, more personal, more intimate. We talked about fears, disappointments, abandoned dreams, old wounds. And the more I got to know Carolina, the more I realized something nobody else seemed to notice. She carried loneliness too. She hid insecurities too. She feared not being chosen too. The difference was that nobody imagined it, because people tend to believe admired people don't suffer, but they do. Sometimes even more. One evening, after a long conversation, I asked, "Have you ever been afraid of ending up alone?" She smiled, a sad smile. "Yes." "When?" "For years." The answer surprised me. "But you've always had so many people around you." Being surrounded by people and being understood are two very different things. I never forgot that sentence, because it revealed a part of her that almost nobody saw. And maybe that was when I finally understood. We weren't growing closer because we were different. We were growing closer because we were alike, far more alike than anyone realized. Then came the night that changed everything, a charity event in town. A large crowd, soft music, decorated tables, conversations everywhere, and comments, always the comments. This time, I didn't even try to listen. I already knew what they would say. I knew the script, but something inside me had changed. Maybe because I was tired of measuring my worth through other people's eyes. Maybe because Carolina had started changing the way I saw myself. Or maybe because some stories eventually reach a point where they can no longer stay hidden. I was standing near the entrance when she arrived. A dark blue dress, hair tied back, that same calm gaze. People greeted her, smiled, talked, everything normal. Then Carolina crossed the room, not toward a group, not toward friends, toward me. I felt it. Everyone noticed. She stopped in front of me, smiled, and then it happened. She took my hand without hesitation, without embarrassment, without fear, in front of everyone. The entire room seemed to slow down. Conversations quieted. Eyes turned toward us immediately. But Carolina didn't let go. If anything, she squeezed my hand more tightly. Then she asked, "Can I tell you something?" My heart nearly burst from my chest. Of course. She took a deep breath and smiled, a smile that seemed to hold years of silence. "Do you remember the first time we talked?" "Yes." "That wasn't the first time I saw you." I froze. "It wasn't?" She shook her head. "I'd been watching you long before that." My heart raced. "How long?" "Almost 2 years." The world seemed to tilt. 2 years? "Yes." She laughed softly. "And do you know what impressed me the most?" "What?" Her eyes filled with tears. "The way you treated people who had nothing to offer you in return." I couldn't speak. She continued. "The doorman, the waiters, the elderly, the children. You were the same person with everyone. No audience, no reward, no hidden agenda." Her voice trembled. "The more I watched, the harder it became to ignore. Every word felt like it was passing straight through my chest, as if I were finally hearing something I had waited my entire life to hear. While everyone else saw appearances," she squeezed my hand, "I saw character. While everyone else measured success, I saw kindness. While everyone else judged, who seemed more impressive. I just wanted to be close to you. In that moment, nobody else existed. Not the room, not the comments, not the judgments, nothing, just us." And a truth finally set free. Tears gathered in her eyes, not dramatic, not exaggerated, just honest. "You spent years believing you weren't enough, but you never realized something." "What?" She smiled, then answered softly. "You were already exactly the man I had been looking for." At that moment, something changed inside me. Not because a woman chose me, but because I realized how many years I had spent seeing only my flaws, ignoring everything that truly mattered. And Carolina had seen it long before I did, much earlier. If this story is touching you right now, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes the greatest transformation happens when someone helps us see what has been inside us all along. Later, when the event ended, we walked together through the town square. The lights reflected on the wet pavement. The breeze was gentle, and for the first time there were no doubts, no distance, no fear, only peace. Then I asked, "What made you hold my hand in front of everyone?" Carolina smiled, a calm smile, peaceful, the kind that feels like home. And she answered, "Because I spent too much time listening to what other people thought, and I didn't want to lose another minute without showing what I felt." We fell silent, a good silence, the rare kind of silence that doesn't separate two people. It brings them closer. And as we walked, I realized something that had taken nearly 40 years to learn. The right person doesn't arrive to convince you that you're worthy. They arrive to reveal a value that was already there, a value you may have spent your entire life unable to see. That night, for the first time, I didn't feel invisible, not because everyone was looking, but because I had finally been seen by the only person who truly mattered.